Lower your ping with What the Fast. What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Throughout the history of League of Legends, there's been loads of champions that have dominated the scene and just been really overpowered. And although there's been tons of overpowered champions, there's only a handful of them that we can look back at and think, holy cow, I can't believe that ever existed. As we go through the top 10 overpowered champions of all time, the only criteria I really used was that the champion had to be overpowered based on their kit and the game state. No bugs and glitches allowed. Anyways, let's get started. Starting at number 10 with the only champion that I think is arguable on this list, we have post-buff Heimerdinger in patch 1.0.0.63. Back then, this was before the first rework of Heimerdinger, not the second more recent rework that you guys know the Donger for. Well, back then, Heimer was a completely different story as he could have 6 turrets out on the map at once and had significantly increased ranges, damages, and tankiness. His rockets hit like a truck and laning against him was pretty much impossible since he would be permanently pushed in. He was notoriously difficult to deal with and having 6 turrets allowed him to zone and DPS really effectively. And ganking him was impossible since he could kite in 2v1 with his crowd control and massive amount of turrets. For number 9 we have post-buff Ezreal in patch 1.0.0.81. Back then, Ezreal had quite a few tools that you probably won't remember. His Q had higher range and damage, while his W not only buffed the attack speed of his allies like it does now, it lowered the attack speed of his opponents by up to 40%, and it had a 1-to-1 heal ratio. So if you played AP Ezreal and your W hit for say 300 damage, it would also be an area of effect heal to your allies for 300 health. And the cooldown on his E was much shorter and could be casted while rooted, and his ultimate had a 1.0 AP ratio. The utility on the AD carry that is today was just out of this world, and even after a ridiculous amount of nerfs, he's still pretty strong and has seen loads and loads of play. For number 8, we have post-buff Rengar on the September 18th World Championship hotfix. Before this was release Rengar, and he actually wasn't that great on release, but this buff gave him so many quality of life features that back then, Rengar defined what it meant to one-shot someone without counterplay. His W had no cast time and had a 0.8 AP ratio, so AP Rengars were rampant, and whether you built him AP or AD, you were sure to completely dominate your lane and instantly blow up carries in teamfights. But the AP build was what dominated, since it was an area of effect burst damage, and so you could assassinate multiple targets from stealth pretty much instantly. Needless to say, the carries never stood a chance. Even after the repeated nerfs and reworks, he is still one of the strongest junglers in the game today. For number 7, we have post-buff Udyr in patch 1.0.0.63, the same patch as Heimerdinger actually. This was back when the game still had dodge in it, and all of his kit made him so much more tanky than he is now, while dealing reasonably more damage. His clear speed at the time was probably the fastest any jungler could ever clear the jungle. It was quite common for you to be level 7 or 8 by the time your mid laner hit level 6, and he could easily solo Baron by the time he hit level 14. Udyr was just pure terror at the time, and he was really difficult to play against, as there was a lot less kiting mechanics in the game to counter him at the time. He just destroyed teams really easily, and you could even win 1v5s by the time you got a full build, since you could build up his dodge chains to a pretty reasonable level. Since then, he's been nerfed into the ground, received major changes twice, and had his fair share of time in the competitive spotlight. For number 6, we have post-buff Evelynn on patch 1.0.0.103. Before Evelynn received the biggest nerf of all time, it turns out that she was a pretty strong champion. Having a targeted stun and stealth that lasts for 60 seconds will do that, not to mention the massive DPS and a huge heal that she had on her ultimate. She easily stomped games and really punished even just tiny mistakes, and forced entire teams to change the way they played to completely revolve around Evelynn, just because she was so difficult to deal with. Stealth that was practically permanent and a stun left us with a champion that was so unbelievably strong in the jungle that counterplay was so difficult and allowed her to just completely dominate games. For number 5, we have release Kassadin. Now most of you will remember when Kassadin had a silence on his kit. What you might not remember is that when Kassadin came out, his W would steal mana from his opponent instead of just giving him mana back. Then in combo with his silence that did way more damage, had a higher AP ratio, and a 1.0 AP ratio on his Force Pulse, not to mention that his ultimate had a much lower mana cost and a 3-second cooldown, and we had an unbelievably overpowered champion. Even after receiving many nerfs and having his kit lose some utility, he became what I think is the most banned champion of all time in solo queue, peaking at around a 95.5% ban rate, and a total pick ban rate of 99.5%, which is honestly just unheard of when it comes to solo queue, and this was after he got nerfed about 4 times or so. He was just ridiculous. For number 4, we have Release LeBlanc pre-hotfix. She only existed in this overpowered state for about 2 days or so, but it's not often that Riot hotfixes a champion immediately after release, where they nerf every single ability on that champion and the base stats. She could easily one-shot people due to increased base damages, increased ranges, increased damage amplification, and a 30-second cooldown on her ultimate at rank 1, not to mention lowered mana cost as well. Her kit, even after a huge amount of nerfs, still reigns supreme, and pre-hotfix LeBlanc is what is essentially the strongest assassin to have ever existed in the game. Bringing home the bronze medal, we have Beta Jax. Way back in the day, dodge existed in the game, and Jax was able to dodge turret shots, so with Ninja Tab Eyes, a couple of Phantom Dancers, and his passive dodge chance on Counter-Strike, it wasn't too difficult to get really close to say 90% dodge chance or so, making him pretty much immune to all auto attacks and turret shots, only killable by abilities. And let's not forget, when he dodged an attack, he could stun his opponent on a fairly short cooldown, while his ultimate did way more damage, and he had a 1.0 AP ratio on 2 abilities, so a Hextech Gunblade and some dodge chance was all he really needed to destroy and just 1v5 teams. He could honestly even 1v5 in the fountain turret, since his extremely high dodge chance tanked the turret for him. He was just an unstoppable machine. Taking home the silver medal, we have Release Xin Zhao. He only existed in the game in his super overpowered state for about 2 weeks or so, but with massive base scaling, lowered cooldowns, higher ranges, and higher percent health damage, he was able to build attack speed and sustain an absurd amount, and jump into teams, ult, and focus down targets one by one for an unstoppable beast that was immediately nerfed. Even after getting nerfed, he was still super strong, and is notoriously known as one of the biggest mistakes in releases Riot has ever made, and likely ever will make. And lastly, taking home the number 1 gold medal, we have Beta Twisted Fate. I'm sure most of us remember back in Season 3 when he was easily the best mid laner and was 100% pick and banned for an entire season of OGN. Well, that was after he had been nerfed what must have been a dozen times. Back in beta, Twisted Fate's ultimate was not his ultimate, it was his E, and had a cooldown of about 40 seconds, and was completely global. His gold card was also an area of effect stun that had a really short cooldown as well, about 6 seconds, and his wild cards had much larger range and did more damage, and his blue and red cards had way more utility, and all in all we were left with this absolutely insane champion, that honestly I can't even believe this guy existed. I mean, at some point in time, this guy actually existed in the game at this state. That in itself is unbelievable, and it's a no-brainer that Twisted Fate takes the number 1 spot. Anyways, that just about wraps up my list. I might have missed a champion or two, especially since I personally did not play during beta, but after some research I'm pretty confident that my list is accurate for the most part. My name is Jeremy, and that's it for my video on the top 10 overpowered champions in League of Legends history. This video was sponsored by Vulcan. Fantasy draft the LCS for money and win big, or play for free and win some pocket change. Use the code GAMINGCurios to support me, and Vulcan will match all deposits you make up to $1,000. Hey guys, it's me, Jeremy. Thanks for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, definitely make sure to hit that like button so I can tell, and if you're interested, definitely check me out over on all the socials, of which you can see over there. And if you really enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe for some more awesome content in the future, and definitely check out some of my other videos as well, up here and over there. Anyways, that's going to be it. Thanks again for watching, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.